Welcome everybody to Civic Engagement in a Time of Isolation. My name is Tom Tresser. I'm the COO rather, and co-founder of the Civic Lab. And the Civic Lab is a do tank for civic engagement and civic innovation based in Chicago for government accountability, civic engagement, and social justice. And I call myself a public defender and an educator and a community builder. And I've been in this work here in Chicago some good 40 years. So we encourage you to share out on the civic media here, Civics in Isolation, and please do follow us at Civic Lab Chicago. And I just have to say that I'm so grateful to be on this call with so many of you from across the country who are awesome doers of democracy, educators, and creators. So I'm so grateful that we are sharing this time together. Also, a special shout out to Cindy Kerman and Lee Barry of Kerman Communications here in Chicago for putting us in touch with this amazing artist we're going to see in just a few minutes. All right, so let us get to it. Before we get into the main part of our meeting, we're going to hear from an amazing performer. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing to allow the artist to take over. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce an esteemed educator, producer, and composer, Jim McElwain, and he will tell us about our guest artist. Please take it away.
Hi, hello everyone. Hello, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. My name is James McElwain. I represent several of the state and city university campuses in New York. And for about half a century I've been teaching, but the other half of that century I was playing. And so I have had the supreme pleasure of working with some of America's great pop artists as they develop. The young artist you are about to hear, Devin Marie, is no exception to that. In fact, she is one of the 2 or 3 very best young singer-songwriters I have ever met. Why? Because of what she says and what she feels. So without further postponement, I'm going to turn this over to Devin Marie singing her song, I Can't Breathe.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I'm tired of living in the skin I'm in. I didn't know danger was synonymous with melanin. Go for jobs but never ask my brother to come out with anybody. Sees a black man running. I'm getting tired of feeding the case of men who can't speak out with a gun in their face, or boys who shot back in convenience stores whose only crime is having skin that was different than yours. What will it take to make you see the only difference between you and me is people listen when you speak, listen carefully. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. We can't breathe.
Wow. Thank you, Devin Marie, for that awesome
Thank you so much for having me.
rendering. So a lot has happened in America. Can you tell us a little bit why you chose to record this song?
Yes, I didn't I didn't choose to record it. In light of all that was happening, it was right after George Floyd had passed away, and it was just all the news was showing, and I was reading the news, watching the news, and I was looking up different videos of George Floyd, and just trying to get to know who he was. And he really just wanted to make this world a better place. And to know that it doesn't matter what your intentions are. It doesn't matter how good of a person you are in the world that we're in today. And to be sitting at my dinner table across from my brother, who is the most gentle, kind-hearted soul you'll ever meet in your entire life. And just knowing that that's not enough anymore it was very hard for me to process. And so how I deal with my emotions is I turn to music. So that's what this really was me helping myself kind of process all that was happening. And I kind of just and I had no idea the impact it would have. I just posted it on Instagram because I thought the words should be shared. And then within a day, I had people telling me to post it everywhere. And I've had people, not even just in the country, like I've had people from Ireland, from like India reaching out to me about it. But more importantly, I've had parents reaching out to me, thanking me for it and telling me that it's helped them facilitate conversations with their children about all that's happening. And that is so important now more than ever, to have these conversations at a younger age and make this younger be a part of that change, and to know that my song is helping people not only even facilitate those conversations, but to be able to reflect and just to set and try to pour out my feelings. So I'm incredibly grateful for all that has come from it.
And so are we.
Yeah.
Part of what we're trying to do here is to talk about being active and powerful in a time of isolation. And I think you just showed us how to do that, which we're so grateful. Jonathan, do you have anything to add or to ask?
Thank you so much for sharing your voice. And I would love for people just to sort of sit with your performance and what you shared with us this morning. And if there's anybody on this webinar that wanted to share and react and respond to Devin's performance and the words and the sounds, by all means, jump in, be courageous, and let us know how you're feeling. And this is a time to connect. And I truly appreciate you opening this space up and helping us land and ground in a shared space. So it truly touches my heart to see you and hear you and to connect with you across the country and all of you. So please, by all means, anybody can just jump in, unmute yourself, and share with us how has this touched you? How are you feeling now in this moment?
Well, I'll jump in. This is Jim McElwain, who introduced Devin. And thank you for attending. And thank you for listening to a presentation which had some technical flaws in it, although not on our artist's part. Here we are at the beginning. You want to talk isolation. One of the most difficult things to do as an artist, as a performing artist, is to create in isolation, because we are so used to creating in teams of humans. And it's forced us to absolutely tax the technology to its max. And those kind of, well, here we are at the beginning of that. This is Thomas Edison's recording of Mary Had a Little Lamb in a way. But we urge you to find Devin's song on the websites and listen to it and study and meditate on the lyrics, which I find are very powerful. Devin is an extraordinary former student. I want to clarify that. I do not produce students, but I do serve as executive producers for alumni. And I am elated to be working with this young artist.
Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else would like to share? I know that I see you guys in the chat. I'm sharing it on the chat, but I would love to hear your voice.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful. And it's okay. It's a great opening and start to this process, exploring how we're all addressing and dealing with civic isolation. Just in a second or two, we're going to be moving into our small groups to have a more intimate conversation around this topic of how are we addressing and dealing with our isolation, and how are we dealing with our civics. Devin, is there anything else you want to share with us in terms of your experience?
Honestly, I'm very happy to be a part of this, and to be able to meet so many people that have a passion for making such a change. But I'm just grateful. I'm more of at a loss for words, but I'm just incredibly appreciative. And I thank you guys so much. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. But I'm happy to be here.
And quickly, Devin, if you would like to share where you're based out of, where you're at?
Yes, I'm on Long Island, New York. I went to Queens College, but I'm in New York. And I'm on all social medias as Devin Murray Music. So that's where you can find me. But yes, I'm out of New York.
Well, we support our New Yorkers. I know you guys are going through tough times. And so our prayers and love and respect are with you and your family. And also, by all means, I encourage everybody on the Zoom webinar to reach out and support artists all over the country. As Jim said, it's been very difficult for the artist community, and I know they're doing their part in terms of engaging with civics and trying to make change. And so we have a great opportunity to really break our isolation and begin to connect and support Devin and artists like Devin who are literally, music is the universal language. And it's a beautiful art form, and it's great to see people using it and utilizing it to unite us in the country in this difficult time. So thank you, Devin, for everything. Appreciate this. You're going to hopefully stay with us and join one of our breakouts?
I'd love to.
Awesome.
Right.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, then, thank you again, Devin. And now it's time to prepare to move into our small groups. But before we do that, we'd like to introduce someone who is from the Ink Factory. Now, the Ink Factory is a wonderful group that does visual facilitation and visual note-taking. So I want to recognize Dusty, if you're with us here.
I am. Hello. Thank you so much, Tom. I think that you might even have a slide right now that you could show everyone.
I'm going to bring that up immediately.
That is so perfect. And I would like to extend my thanks to Devin for your musical talent. It was absolutely stunning. In my other life, I am a sculptor, and it definitely resonates about being creative in this time with me personally and with all my artist friends. And it was nice to hear that you could say that people have already reached out saying that, it's helping parents have conversations with children at a young age, and that's very powerful. So thank you. Yeah. But today, Ink Factory, my company, is also going to be using some creative talent to help kind of visually facilitate this meeting. And so what we do is we take visual notes, and our slogan's "You Talk, We Draw, It's Awesome." And that means that we are listening to everything that's happening today. We're synthesizing it and then drawing it out in words and pictures similar to what you see on the PowerPoint. Another person with a visual background named Emma below, and she's about to share her screen, but she's one of Ink Factory's artists. She's fabulously talented, and she will be drawing everything that's happening today in the meeting. So later on in the breakouts, you'll see that your voices are heard during the report out while Emma draws them. And at the end of the session, we'll also share it. But I think she's going to share her screen right now so you can see what she's already done during the performance and introductions. And thank you so much, Tom, for having Ink Factory. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Dusty. This is Emma, and I am about to share my screen. One moment. All right, is everyone able to see my screen?
Yep.
Great.
Great.
Yes, so like Dusty said, I'll be listening to conversations and generating this artwork, and we can share out towards the end, and you guys can see a recap of the conversations we're having.
Superb. We are so grateful for the participation of the Ink Factory, and the notes from this meeting, the video, the graphics that Emma will produce will all be on the Civic Labs website by Monday, and everyone will get a link to that in a follow-up email, so you don't need to worry about it right now, but all this material will be saved for you, as well as the resources that you're going to share with us. We'll keep track of them. All right, moving forward. We're about to head into our small groups. And here's what we'd like you to share while in your small groups. How does isolation show up for you in these times? How are you being resilient? So what does that look like? There are many coping strategies that people are struggling with and are using, and we'd like to know about them. What does effectiveness look like for you right now? I certainly had a sense as an activist and organizer what effectiveness was like before COVID, but what is it like now? And finally, what is urgent? What's on your plate right now and in the near term? So here we go into your small groups.
Right now, what we'd like to do is give all groups an opportunity to share out. What were some of the takeaways, some of the highlights of the conversation, some unique things you learned, or something that just sort of highlights your overall conversation, insights, takeaways. And then also, if you were able to take notes on the Google Drive, that's fine. If not, if you took notes by hand, old school, which is great, by all means, please share those notes with us. Tom could put in the chat his email. You want to email his notes. We're trying to definitely keep a record of the conversations and keep us focused and keep all of us connected going forward into the summer. And so any group could jump in. We had about, I think, 10 groups out. So let's go ahead and start with group 1. If you wanted to share some insights and takeaways from your small group, that'd be great.
And Emma, we want you to see what you're up to. So while you guys are sharing, Emma will be scribing. Thank you.
Okay, group 1. Nobody else wants to speak for group 1, so I am speaking. I would say on isolation, the common themes were sort of, okay, I'm just confused by what's happening on my screen. Isolation from family, including from family who are struggling in different ways. And to isolation with family. We all felt, I believe, some degree of isolation in sort of the interruption from normal work environments to sort of continuing things through technology, or most of us said that. And we talked about our ways of finding resilience included being able to continue with work relationships and family relationships through technology, and also significantly time with nature, being outside, meditative practices or mindfulness practices, and there was one other thing in there, and exercise is helping us to be resilient. I think effectiveness, we all felt that overall that we were somewhat less effective, or we mostly felt that we were somewhat less effective than usual, depending on, I would say, what we're valuing as effectiveness in our lives, in our different lives. And kind of as a group, we tended to feel that what feels urgent to us now is hanging on, just hanging on. And that in a sense, everything has added urgency. Someone said, it's maybe a good thing that we have interrupted business as usual, that we have these two very immediate crises of the COVID and the police brutality crisis, or police brutality resistance that's going on, and they are sort of requiring opposite actions from us, and this is all against the backdrop of the ecological crisis, that it's maybe hard to even find time to try to be effective in addressing that. And that makes us just feel, to some extent, it's almost overwhelming how urgent everything seems. So that's my best summary of what everybody in Group 1 had to say.
That's a great summary.
Okay.
A lot was in there, so I'm glad you guys had that chance to connect and sort of flesh out the challenges. So thank you so much. Next group, Group 2.
I'm happy to share. I have the notes in front of me, so I get to cheat a little bit. I think that just to kind of the theme that I loved most, Dad explained isolation, was Kyra explained it as a feeling of whiplash, especially right now, that it's like, I need to take care of myself. I need to be out there, but there's a pandemic. How do I keep myself? How do I have my voice heard? I thought that was a really sort of great way to like encompassing of how we're feeling in isolation.
Yeah.
For resilience, a lot of therapy, a lot of long walks and exercising, and also I thought this was great, like realizing when you're at capacity and like when you've hit a wall, and then taking that time then to take care of yourself, whether that's like doing some meditation or putting on a face mask or making some good food. That's been a good way to practice self-care. And also doing action work also as self-care of resiliency, of like the energizing feeling of being out and having your voice heard in a protest or a march. For measuring impact and effectiveness, a lot of us talked about like the challenge in that right now, because so much of measuring it is having butts and seats, if you will, or counting heads, and that's harder to do right now. And so thinking about how you can measure in a different way. We also talked about DEI work, diversity, equity, inclusion work, and what's needed right now for that, as well as, I really love this suggestion of always making sure, like in working for a national organization, to have local voice represented as well, and having, pulling in voices who maybe not would have been heard otherwise in really being impactful. And the urgency and focus there was kind of a range of it, which I really loved and felt deeply that there was like, I don't know if I'm there yet, one day at a time, to getting people out of nursing homes, to keep them safe. Juneteenth was also the immediate focus, a week from yesterday. And then also thinking about the sustainability team for the year, the sustainability team for Chicago. And also, and Jackie Baldwin, you'll be very happy to hear this, passing the fair tax amendment in Illinois.
Can you say that again?
Passing the fair tax amendment in November. And that was my quick rundown for group 2.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much. Truly appreciate it. Beautiful stuff. Next group. Jump in there. Group 3.
This is Dusty. I appreciated the time to share and to listen. I think that there definitely was a sense that, the isolation versus loneliness, trying to keep yourself sort of away, taking time to stay grounded was very important, like we've heard. I think everybody is just trying to be resilient right now with the urgency of everything. It's hard to prioritize how much to do, and the word urgent is a difficult one. I think everybody kind of spoke to a support system being very important, and also keeping your self-worth, so despite the fact that many people on my team were struggling with, either salary cuts or being unemployed, people are feeling more busy than they ever have. So, taking that time to stay grounded, but also not just taking work that doesn't feel like it's worthy of your talents, seemed to be quite important. And for me personally, one of the things was, what can I do, and what is enough? That's my sense of urgency. It's like, how do I think one of my trauma responses is staying busy and being aware of that, so that I also take time to sit with and meditate on what I need to process. But staying connected and the importance of helping other people despite the challenges, I think, over what was something that we all kind of spoke to. But team, please jump in.
Dusty, I think you should talk about what you and your company has done, because I thought that was pretty remarkable, like what you're doing about volunteerism and.
Oh, sure. As a small business owner, it's something that's, a lot of people maybe are taking time. They have extra time because they aren't working, not by choice. For me as a small business owner, I feel I'm working more because I want to make sure that my company, weathers the storm. And as a response to, all of the things that have been going on in the last couple of weeks, summed up with the Black Lives Matter movement and the police brutality issues, our team got together and we had a talk about racial justice and what Ink Factory could do to use our time and talent in a pandemic where we don't have, extra funds to throw around, but we do have a skill set that can help lift others' messages. And so we've committed to putting 2% of our revenue, our annual revenue, towards partnering with different nonprofits and organizations that are lifting the Black Lives Matter movement so that those messages can get out more. We also are taking a racial unconscious bias workshop so that we can learn and share those messages out. And we have an extra PTO day a quarter that our employees can use for volunteerism if they choose to. We encourage that. And, I'm trying to remember the other thing. Oh, we created a bunch of posters because, we draw. So we created posters that people could download and print to show solidarity or copy in the movement.
Wow, that's a lot. That's impressive. It's great to hear. Real, clear ideas and ways for small business owners and entrepreneurs to contribute back into the overall struggle. So I appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Is that it for you guys? You good?
That's good.
Cindy?
I'm good.
I love it. I love it. I think I use humor as a way of phasing out. That's what I got to at this point, especially after 11 weeks of homeschooling. That's my own personal issue. All right. So next group 4. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you, Dusty.
I can go, but others may want to jump in. It seemed like isolation was actually a fruitful time for most of the people in my group. Developing new skills, getting new certifications, finding time to slow down and reconnect with people in their families particularly. And that also is the resiliency of this time. Another part of the resiliency is encouraging others as well as themselves to develop new skills and get something out of this time, make it a productive time instead of just a time of closing in on yourself. So effectiveness is part of that as well, developing new projects, coming up with new ideas, and then finding a way to implement them after this time is over. We had some interesting connections within the group, so I think there may be fruitful things coming out of those connections after this is over.
Awesome.
And then as far as urgency went, I think it's critical. It's looking at the upcoming election and what actions we need to take around that election. It's focusing on seeing humanity as humans first and foremost. And it's also focusing on racial issues, on racial equity, equality. And I think that's it for us.
Awesome.
Unless somebody else wants to jump in.
Group 4, anybody else from Group 4 want to jump in? It's all good if you can.
Well, I think
No
I'll.
pressure.
We talked about amongst ourselves that it's been a productive time because we, are thinking of new things, learning new skills, planning for what we will be focused on when this is all over. But I think we also acknowledge that, and Charles, you really bring this up, for a lot of people, they haven't gotten to that point yet. And so we need to empower everybody to try to find a way to get in touch with their vision or their goals or, and what's possible for them so that they can get into the mode where they see some, a bright future, some bright new things that they can get involved with or do after this is all over. There is a gap there between the people that are empowered and the people that aren't. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Awesome. Good job, you guys. Thank you so much. I think it's great to, it's great to see all of the above, right? All of it. It's about balance and looking at everything. So I appreciate Group 4's report back. Group 5, thank you, Lee. And
hello, we're Group 5. First, I just want to say thank you, everyone, for sharing. I'm learning a lot, and it's been a really productive workshop. So for Group 5, oops, let me know if you can hear me. For Group 5, some highlights that stood out were the power of community and how this is a time to reevaluate, reflect, best to show up for our community. But also, this virus has created a new reality for some, but we also have to be mindful that, we're all experiencing this differently, and this is some people's daily reality, and making sure that we are thinking of, this has been a time for reevaluating our systems and the inherent inequities in the system. And one thing for us was that you can't replace the human connection, that in-person human connection that we have. So for us as educators and working with youth and community engagement, making sure that we're showing up for our community. And one thing that Mary mentioned, which I like, is being cautiously optimistic. And if anyone else from the team wants to join in, I don't have the notes in front of me, but feel free to share.
Awesome.
Yeah. This is Mary in this group and can share kind of a summary of our notes. We, as Lynn shared, we all kind of had this intrinsic desire or motivation to build connections with others to keep our community connected and strong. Issues, more specific things that came up were concerns about how mental health issues are increasingly being seen and how that impacts different communities differently due to stigma and lack of resources, particularly for communities with people of color. Concerns about communities that lack access to broadband is something that I brought up. I'm in a very rural community, and our entire region has we lack that resource, and so that has led to increased isolation for many people, but also that this pandemic has shown us that in a different way, all the pre-existing tears in our societal fabric, and how that this pandemic perhaps creates new opportunities and motivations to address them, to create a better society overall. And I liked when we talked about the resilience, we talked about kind of how this pandemic has helped us see things differently. So how there's potential for technology to act as a societal equalizer eventually, once we all have it, that this creates opportunities, as Lynn said, for reflection and creative rethinking. How we see society and how we reassess the priorities of our communities, and maybe even how we allocate our funds accordingly. And advocacy was identified as a shared strategy to build resilience, both in terms of advocating for access to resources that are most impacted, making sure there's more equity in resource allocation in general, whether we're talking about access to medical care, mental health, broadband, all of those things, education. I think all of us had stories about how we're increasingly incorporating racial equity education and training, whether that's for ourselves personally or for our professions. So those were the things I wanted to.
Awesome. No, spot on. Thank you guys. Thank you, Group
Thank
5.
you.
Look at you all. I'm so excited, man. I'm getting more pumped up here. So thank you. Appreciate you all. Group 6. Anybody from Group 6, or they jump out? Anybody here from Group 6 that wants to share out?
Yeah, I guess I can, if that's okay, Jennifer. So I took notes. This is Ann Schulte, and I'm at California State University, Chico in California.
Oh,
and
great.
We talked a lot about, a lot of people have already touched on a lot of the things we discussed, the value of the time and connecting. I would add, we talked a little bit about rural places, as someone was just mentioning, and how heartened we were to see some of the conversations that were happening in lots of spaces that typically maybe don't discuss race, and as a rule, and that we are seeing participation that around race that we've not seen before, and how to keep that happening, especially if we continue to be in a virtual environment. And also the importance of voter education and civic education, that this window is open for us to do what, and I'm a teacher educator, so I'll take responsibility for the public school system in maybe not doing as good of education around civic learning and critical participation. So how can we lean into this period and in the next 4 months really be looking at that as an aspect? And then just one more note that I was is that this is one battle in the context of climate change. Lest we forget that that is also happening while this is going on, so that this is, there are multiple layers of work to be done. And I guess. if you want to add anything, Anne or Jennifer.
Awesome. It's all good. Appreciate that. Welcome. It's great to see you, and thank you for joining us. Awesome, guys. Group 7. There's anyone from Group 7? I know that some people had to jump off. After all, it is the Saturday, so we appreciate that. Okay. Anyone from Group 7?
Yeah, if I could unmute myself. I have the notes that Sarah took for us. So basically on isolation, we all felt it in a variety of ways. Just isolation because some folks aren't used to being, and I'm not going to call names out of respect for the conversation, but one person is really struggling because she's really an outdoor person. Fatigue seems to have gotten us. With resilience, it was run the gamut. Marco Polo app, walks, games, playing with our children, exercise, board games, everything, to find some affirmations, reading inspiring quotes. And we're measuring our effectiveness by looking at how our work is still moving forward and working with other people, attending protest virtually to stay safe. So lots of ways for measuring effectiveness. Personally, because my work is organizing, I have actual measurements and I can see, views and things like that. So I have real easy ways to measure it. And what's next? Everybody is very interested in working on making sure accountability is part of the change, racial healing circles, reaching out to elected officials. So there's this real sense of this now is the time and we must not miss the opportunity to create the change.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jacqueline, so much. All right. Group 8. Appreciate that.
My name is Pilar Pacheco, and I am from Cal State University, Channel Islands in California. And like so many of you all have already shared, for us, the first question around isolation, many of us shared that we were experiencing fatigue on a daily basis, feelings of overwhelmed, anxiety. Someone shared that at first it was a very positive experience, but then as the weeks went on and financially their problems were compounded, it became very stressful. Some of us were experiencing insomnia because and anxiety because a lot of people were in the house and they were in a community where there was a lot of COVID breakouts. And then also the feeling of being trapped was shared too. And then to combat those feelings, many of us talked about going outside into either, our small spaces, our gardens, to be able to plant, and that seeing plants grow actually gave us feelings of hope. Some used this time to be reflective on their practice. Many of us shared that we were doing webinars and videos and expanding our knowledge in those ways, and then also spending a lot of quality time with family. Effectiveness, so there was this tension between, in the work of civic engagement, it is about creating opportunities to be out there, right? But yet, there's this feeling of, we have to isolate ourselves. And so just sort of how to go between the two of those things. Someone in our group shared that they did this project where they prepared envelopes for assisted living places where they wrote poetry and sent it to the the assisted living homes. They
Hmm.
wanted to do something. And then the what is next? Well, yeah, I think it's like so many. What is next is dealing with what is going on in our world, police brutality against Black lives, the inequities that certainly this pandemic has shown, and finding ways to support our communities in going forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Pilar. Absolutely. Thank you for that report, that share out. I appreciate that. Thank you, Group 8. Group 9?
Hi, I'm Merle Tresser. I'm going to skip some of the things that everybody else talked about. I think they're very smart and cogent, and appreciate what happened in other groups in addition to ours. Our group, in terms of isolation, was a little more open to what the circumstances and what Zoom has done for us. So, in addition to isolating us, there was a feeling that the Zoom and the constant use of Zoom really led to some intimacy and gave us the ability to be pretty intimate with the people in the boxes on the other side of the screen, but that it also led to fatigue. It's just not the same thing as sitting down with a group of coworkers or friends and having a discussion. And a concern going forward about the lack of physical touch and how meaningful that is to us as human beings, and how that's going to play out going forward. For resilience, one of the things, in addition to all the things that people were saying about games and family and outside and all that, one of the things that our group found kept them resilient was a focus on the meaningful activities that they were doing. That the same things that nourished us as people before this all happened still continue to nourish us, meaningful work and the feeling of making a difference. So in addition to all those other things that people said. And throw in comments, guys, if I'm leaving something out important. Impact and effectiveness. I think the thing that I learned from our group that I'm so grateful for is to understand that what we do, we're all trying to drive things forward, and to understand that we're part of a bigger movement in whatever we're doing, and that we need to feel grateful for and accomplished for the small steps we're able to make. My mom always said, count yourself. You know, you're not the biggest one in the room. You're not the one who can make the biggest difference. It's hard for us who are trying to drive things forward to remember that. And to remember that small steps matter, that they help move things ahead. Also, in terms of impact and effectiveness, we're using this time for learning and taking time to study things that otherwise we might not have. We're middle-class white women in my group. We're taking time to learn about the impact of slavery in our country, to try and understand Black Lives Matter as a movement, and to try and get more in touch with what's happening in other communities. Going forward, we want to find ways to move outside of our own circles and to build better relationships with other communities. And all of us are working on making sure that our communities vote, and to help other communities as they need help, to encourage their citizens to vote. We believe that the ripples of our work will continue outwards and will make a difference. Leave anything out, guys?
That sounds awesome. Thank you, Merle. Appreciate that. The last group, before we transition, Group 10. Anybody from Group 10 that want to share out? Last chance, last call. Group 10.
I'll go.
Okay. Okay, who's this? Lauren. Thank you, Lauren.
I guess some of the things we talked about in our group that, similar to, what I've heard already, one, this idea of how the lack of touch and human contact certainly, affects, what both lifestyle and what we do. And, a few of us, particularly that that aspect was important, this idea of, connecting and, actually being in the place where you connect with people, and, that having to be, it could be a thing that I kind of was leading a bit in terms of like the direction of the discussion was actually more, or really even just this discussion of isolation is really kind of a privileged thing. It's kind of a rich people problem in a sense, in the idea that there are a lot of people that really don't have that option, don't have the option to isolate. So for us to kind of commiserate with each other about how it's affecting us and affecting our lives, real talk, in a way, a lot of that is a question of privilege. You know what I mean? And, one of the things, we would say is that, one of the things that we talked about that, we do when we're starting to feel like that is just to remember once again, you're not in an ICU, thinking of PPE gear. You're not driving a bus, right? Grocery store workers are that's something that's being organized about, is how many grocery store workers are being, impacted by this, right? And so, we did, talk a little, and we were probably a lot more unstructured than some of these other groups, because I was just fascinated listening to what everybody's actually doing now, both in their work to, you could say, compensate for, what the, limitations are with this situation. But just, kind of like what people are just doing, and how curiously a lot of what we're doing that kind of speaks to what's going on now is stuff we've already been doing for years, right? And somebody else from our group can jump in, but I was just fascinated listening to what folks were doing. Unfortunately, one of our group members, I won't call her out, we didn't get to hear as much from her. I'm hoping I get to be in another breakout room where I can hear a little bit more about, what she's doing. I don't know if anybody else in the group wants to jump in.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you, Group 10. Thank you for bringing up all the issues, Group 1 through 10. I appreciate all of the comments and the takeaways and the insights. I do want to make sure that you know that in the chat, we dropped in some resources. So you got to scroll up on the text a little bit. We dropped some resources that we're connecting with. It's from Tom Tresser. He dropped it in there. We've got we dropped in a few things. I want to just quickly say Xander Kegg, his website there. He's the National Social Worker of the Year for 2020 on resilience. So checking out his profile and the work he's doing. If you want to connect to additional resources, we dropped in there also stuff from Deborah Donahue Keegan, the AD Associate Director at Tisch College of Civic Life at Tufts University. So there's definitely a resource page coming out of that university system that people could check out. We also dropped in this votefromhome.org. There is a national movement to try to get voting from home, increasing access across the country. And so they're definitely doing some great work. And then there's also many good articles in Mediums, one another. So again, what I would encourage is to use the chat to drop in resources that you think we should all check it out. You can save the chat. We'll save it as well. But definitely we can use that box as just putting in like our and links and connections that can help us further this conversation going forward. I truly appreciate everybody's time and effort in the small groups. A lot of deep insights came out of the conversations, and clearly I feel like there's also things that we can move forward together in terms of our forward momentum. What we want to do though is sort of transition to a couple brief presentations, and the first one we're going to be doing is Jackie Baldwin. She is the community organizer for the Jewish Council Member, long-time organizer and educator with extensive experience in grassroots campaigning and voter activation. So right now, what we want to provide is some insight from some key things that are happening. Jackie is doing some great work, and we wanted to give her a few minutes to share what she's doing that as well. So I'm passing this on to Jackie. Yeah, unmute. There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Tom, for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. It is good. Shabbat Shalom. It is good to be with all of you today. I can't think of a better way to prepare to rest this afternoon and honor the Sabbath than thinking and talking about Tikkun Olam. What is Tikkun Olam? Why do we hear it so often? As a core value of our Judaic faith, Tikkun Olam provides purpose. Simply put, it means to repair the world. Tom, you can go to the next slide. I know this seems like a huge ask, but we must remember that God doesn't think small. We are all being called to create a world where our actions truly manifest hope, faith, and charity. So how do we rise to such a challenge? We should be on 3 still. If we look closely, we see that this repair is actually accomplished through small and big acts of courage and fellowship. Every mitzvah, be it small or large, helps us repair the world. It helps us improve our communities. Each mitzvah is a step forward on the path to respecting the humanity of every person. Every mitzvah helps us make the ideal that we are all created in the image of our Creator, present and real. Next slide, Tom. Now, more than ever, this work has seemed difficult. The loss of George Floyd has made us all stop and really look at ourselves and the world that we live in. It would be easy to feel like it doesn't matter, or say that since those that came before us failed, we'll fail too. There have been many days that I thought covering my head and staying in bed would be the best choice. But I'm part of a great team and a great family at JCUA, and we constantly remind ourselves of the words of the Talmud that you can see on the screen and read along with me. We must not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. We are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are we free to abandon it. This world needs us all to dig deeper and move the earth, shake it up, and remake it. Next slide, please. So on this Shabbat, I rise, we rise, to give praise to the Most High for giving us Torah. I give thanks for the responsibility of my siblings and do this work that remains undone. I lifted by all those that join in the work. I am here, you are here. We are here. We are here, and the time is now to make it clear. Black lives matter. Next slide, Tom. Each week, my rabbi, Capers Fournier, reminds me that we should heed instruction and honor the commandments of the Torah, and that it is an Eitz Chaim, or a tree of life, for those who grasp it, and for those who draw near are fortunate. So let us be sure the branches that we prune and tend are branches of freedom, equality, and justice for all. Let us be the bearers of peace, love, and faith. Let us work together. Slide 7. Look at ourselves, our shuls, our workplaces, and be certain there is a seat at the table for those that do not look like you. Listen attentively to the voices so that you can become an ally and be a booming voice for justice. Repairing the world is a collective effort that is done one person at a time. So let us not be daunted. It's not a job for one person, but each person can make a difference. So how do we begin? Let's take a look at the next slide. Starting now, we can all choose kindness. Small things. Open a door. Let someone in front of you in line. Compliment a stranger. Choose to do all things in kindness. We can be supportive. We can make purchases from minority-owned businesses. Invest in Black-owned companies. Make a donation to small community not-for-profits on the South and West sides that do tremendous work in their communities. Make a donation, call your elected representatives and learn where they stand on issues like defund funding for equitable education, fair housing. And you can join JCUA for our weekly phone bank so that we can educate our neighbors and voters to vote yes for fair tax in November. Next slide. Lastly, we can stay present. We can make each day a day that we actively do something small or large that manifests Tikkun Olam. We can together repair the world. Thank you for inviting me today and to share with you. And please know that I am here and I know that you are here so that we can do this work together. I look forward to seeing you all again as we make the world a better place. Thank you.
Ashe, thank you. Blessings and gratitudes for sharing everything that you're bringing to this space. Love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. Incredible presentation on Tikkun Olam. It's great just to hear about the frameworks and the strategies and the approaches of how we continue to build and strengthen our humanity collectively. Before I go into the next piece of this, real quick, I definitely want to make sure and recognize Emma and Dusty, Ink Factory. Please, by all, first of all, thank you so much for taking the notes. Reimagining how we take notes in the struggle is actually very critical. And so it's an awesome, awesome gift that you're sharing with us. And I'm just thinking out loud, like, oh, this could be something that we got to keep doing more of in terms of even how we record our liberation struggles and how we at face-to-face meetings continue to look at and visualize how we're thinking is an incredible gift. So we appreciate that. Jacqueline, truly appreciate your words of wisdoms and sharing the Tikkun Olam philosophy and sharing what JCUA is doing to move the struggle forward. Before we go into the last piece, I do want to share with you also another sort of framework philosophy for a few minutes. It's going to be very quick, and so that we can get to the next piece of pulling this all together. This is called a quick dip in the shallow pool of the spirit of Ubuntu. Real quick, if you can show me by thumbs up or by hands, how many people have ever heard this the notion of Ubuntu? Okay, great. That's awesome. Of course you have. That's wonderful. So this is going to be a lot quicker, and hopefully what I can share with you may even strengthen your own knowledge and your own wisdom about this. And so I quickly engaged I learned about Ubuntu by going to South Africa when I was in my 20s and 1992 before the elections. And so it was definitely a moment of extreme conflict for a young Black American going there. I was kind of looked at kind of weirdly when I was getting them planned to go to South Africa. That's a whole nother story. But so I learned about Ubuntu in real time. I was there for 2 months, learning to be an organizer with the African National Congress and the Pan-African Congress and the local civic groups. And so I'm going to share my screen and give you just a real quick taste of what Ubuntu is. I wanted to start this brief presentation on Ubuntu with a short story that can help visualize and think about what Ubuntu is and the spirit of Ubuntu. An anthropologist proposed a game to children of an African tribe. He put a basket of fruit near a tree and told the kids that the first one to reach the fruit would win them all. When he told them to run, they all took each other's hands and ran together, then sat together enjoying the fruits. When asked why they ran like that, as one could have taken all the fruit for oneself, they said, Ubuntu. How can one of us be happy if all the others are sad? Ubuntu, in its essence, is a philosophy of African tribes that can be summed up as I am because we are. Let me go back. So, for me, to keep myself focused as a longtime organizer for 3 decades working with young people, I know that seeing and understanding the world that is experiences through their eyes, through their living experiences, helps liberate myself, it keeps me focused, and is an incredible gift that our young people have offered to me over the last 3 decades of the world through the eyes of young people and children. I think there's a lot we can gain in terms of how do we liberate ourselves on a daily basis. For me, the story, the simple act of holding hands and running to the basket of fruit beneath the tree together speaks volumes to how we should act toward one another and towards the planet that we all share. This group of young people understood the game. They brought their energy, their spirit, culture, and responded with a level of unity and formation so simple and yet so deep that if you think about our society, what would be our response? What would be our response if we were to be given an opportunity to participate in a game like this? Would we run together, holding hands, and making sure that all of us in the group get to enjoy the fruits? It's something to think about during this time of isolation. The roots of Ubuntu can be roughly looked at in several areas. Southern African liberation, indigenous native culture and history, rooted in historical context, and then exploring what will be a legacy in terms of the Ubuntu legacy. Understanding the roots of any humanistic philosophy like Ubuntu is essential to its utilization and its manifestation across the human condition and experience. So having even a bit of small knowledge, an ounce of knowledge about the history and context is so critical, where Ubuntu derives from and how it has become this global phenomenon. So we know it's a global phenomenon. Millions of people subscribe to aspects of Ubuntu across the world. And understanding that history and context is, to me, critical to really living it in an authentic, inspirational way. Ubuntu is an African philosophy. It is a way of life. It's a way of being. It comes from the Southern African experience, history, and context, particularly in the phase of liberation struggles against the oppressive white minority regimes. The global phenomenon that millions of people adore now derives from an intense period of conflict between human beings where there are massive casualties and death, and at the same time a groundswell of liberation and togetherness. I cannot understate that it was a brutal, brutal war in Southern Africa. And hundreds of thousands of people died in fighting for their liberation, literally. And so this notion of Ubuntu, I am because you are, came out of that conflict. And so in that of itself is a beautiful thing to understand that out of the deep conflicts that we have between human beings, we can extract and utilize and develop an alternative ideology and framework to living. Ubuntu, in its most basic and authentic manifestation, is the antidote to the immediate injustices and inequities that are inextricably linked part of a culture and system of domination by one group over another. In the Southern African context, the spirit of Ubuntu was a centering force that provided the vast majority of South Africans the opportunity to transition from a white colonial regime culture to a culture rooted in African and humanistic traditions. Such a transition is critical. Ubuntu is about how you carry yourself on a daily basis in relation to others. This can be understood by reflecting on 3 core aspects of the personal, the interpersonal, and the systemic. Ubuntu in the personal domain focuses on how do you increase your own self-awareness. In the interpersonal domain, it focuses on how you relate and care for others. And in the systemic domain, Ubuntu focuses on how do we create healthy, value-centered organizations, considering the larger social, political, and historical context of which we are part. Our families, friends, our social networks, our work family networks, governments, schools, faith-based institutions, civic groups, nonprofit groups, and NGO groups. any type of way we gather and organize ourselves, even during one of the greatest moments that we are experiencing isolation and pain, when rooted in Ubuntu, we will have what we need to overcome any barriers that we face. So, real quick, I don't know if you know about the Baba tree, but that Baba tree is part of the African legacy. It's one of the oldest species on the planet, 800, 1,000 years old, and they're all over Africa. It's a beautiful thing when you come up to. It's a very spiritual moment when you're standing under a Baba tree or when you see a Baba tree. And when you look at the Baba tree, you can tell the roots, how rooted it is in the soil, in the land, in the continent of Africa. And it is the universal symbol of Africa. Like the Baba tree, Ubuntu is that universal framework, that universal legacy for Africa, the African continent that has been passed on to the entire world. I am because you are. I am because we are. And this spirit has been manifested all over the world. It's been refined, self-defined. It's been expressed in so many ways by so many people across the globe. In this short visual, you can already see, here we had 3 Nobel Peace winners, right? We've got the incredible warrior, Wangari Maathai, who led the Green Movement in East Africa, right? And how she manifested Ubuntu in that framework was phenomenal. You have the Bishop of Africa, of Peace, right? Bishop of Peace from Africa to the world, Archbishop Bishop Desmond Tutu. You can't be human all by yourself, right? What you do affects the whole world. And then we have our former President Obama speaking at Nelson Mandela's funeral, brought that gift to the world. And then lastly, in our African cultures and traditions, it's critical to understand that Ubuntu is rooted in our women and children. And the notion that when you educate a woman, you educate a nation. It is about nation building. So again, real quick, that's pretty much the whole thing. Just a real quick dive into what Ubuntu is. I encourage everybody to dig in, explore Tikkun, Olam, the spirit of Ubuntu. These are humanistic philosophies and frameworks that can actually replace what we usually know, right? We're so used to what exists now. This is the way to think. This is the way to act. We've been bred in this American westernized culture. There are real live alternatives that come from indigenous communities from all over the world. And I just want to say, for me, when I was a young man, young black Vietnamese man, going to South Africa in the early 90s, literally for 2 weeks, the experience I had was not a literature experience. It was like a physical, raw, emotional experience where literally I was taken into every single home that we had here. And so I was traveling around South Africa for 2 months, learning from the people, eating their bread. They shared everything they had with me. And that's Ubuntu. Inviting strangers literally into your household, taking care of them, making sure their needs are met. Passing that on is at the base level a huge aspect of Ubuntu, right? And the notion again is that we need to turn that on in our culture and society. We need to flip the switch and say, you know what? We need to take that extra ounce, that extra moment to get out there and turn that switch on, especially now. We cannot be divided. So everything we need to bring justice and equity and harmony and balance to our society in Chicago and across the country is here. It's in us. We are the answers. I am because you are, and I am because we are. So thank you. I appreciate you all giving us the space to share a couple of unique ways of looking at how we can coexist and learn and grow with each other. What I'd like to do is to pass the last remaining piece over to my brother, Thomas Tresser.
Thank you, Brother Jonathan. I sit here deeply moved by all the sharing from our colleagues online today. I'm just speechless with the eloquence of Jackie and yourself, Jonathan, to break it down for us. Really sitting here learning and marveling at you all. That's really, really something. And so it's up to me now just to sort of connect the dots a little bit. As Jonathan was saying, we have what we need in our grasp. And we're suggesting that the mindset that we need in isolation to commit to before we go back out into the world, and as we do so with these new mindsets. And I'm going to say it's partly civic love. So we're calling for more civic love by speaking up, by uniting, by sharing resources with our neighbors, by fighting for the common good across our differences and across our geographies. We need a huge public love response to COVID-19 and in response to the injustice that is being displayed so starkly across our country and our world. And so how does more civic love and more powerful civic space built on that love show up for you? This is the central challenge of our time, we believe, at the Civic Lab. And so I'd like to share this little quote from a wonderful book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Maxey. And this is what he says in the book. "We don't know about tomorrow," said the horse. "All we need to know is that we love one another. Tikkun Olam, Ubuntu." So what we say is, we call for hashtag more civic love. Civic love, ladies and gentlemen. And hashtag more public, built on that civic love. The generosity of one person in their heart towards another, expanded by millions and billions through government and collaboration. That's how Ubuntu and Tikkun Olam will get translated from the individual persons sitting on this call into actual making things happen at the larger society. So we're up for helping folks organize their own civic love or more public forums. And what would it look like for you and your people? We would love to be with you on that journey. Well, so now we are going to be transitioning out of our wonderful meeting into the after party. But very shortly after we leave you, we're going to be sending out an email with a link to an evaluation, which we hope you take, and also some other links that will capture the wonderful stuff that's been shared on this amazing time together. We're also calling everyone back in 2 weeks on June 27th. You'll get a note on that, just for sharing and deepening the conversations we've had today. So look for that, an invitation to return on June 27th. And with that, please, Jonathan, take us home.
All right. Thank you so much for sticking with us as we went over a little bit over time. Quick temp check, the people that are on. I would love to see how you all feeling. I know it's been it's a blessing just to get on and be here. It is a privilege, as Lauren said, to be on a Zoom Saturday morning, to have this discussion, have the opportunity to decompress and connect. So you can respond in the chat with your blessings and gratitudes to all of you. But I hope that this was very helpful and useful for each and every one of you as you maintain yourselves and your families and your networks. I know that each one of you is an incredible resource and treasure, and so I appreciate each one of you. I am, because you are. Again, we invite you after this. We're going to stay on board. We invite you, if you want, to just hang out for a few minutes and check in. Willing to come back, we want to bring you back and June 27th to do some more more action-oriented stuff. I know that a lot came out of the small groups. We will be compiling all of those notes and getting that to you, and you'll have a resource, access to a resource link with all the information that we're sharing tonight. If you want anything to be included in that document, by all means, drop it into the chat. Drop any resource links, campaigns, things you're working on, ideas. Please, let's use the chat as a parking lot for any and all things happening that can bring us even closer together in a time of isolation. So a huge thank you to Devin Marie and our co-producers Jim McElwin and Elza Liphart. Thank you so much for opening up the space and grounding us in an incredible spirit of just it just helps so much just to be here with everyone, to visualize a different way of connecting. I also want to give a huge, awesome thank you and gratitudes and blessings to the wonderful artists at the Ink Factory, Dusty and Emma, and also the PR geniuses at Kerman Communications. All these partners came together. Thank you to Tom for bringing them together to offer this to you all, to us in the world. It is a ripple effect. Everything matters now. You matter, I matter, we all matter now. So together, I think we can truly change the world. Also, Cindy Kerman, Lee Berry, our guest speaker, Jackie Baldwin. Thank you so much, JCUA. Jackie, thank you so much for sharing your insights, your wisdom. And I know that you're working as a former organizer, you are getting it in. So I truly appreciate you. I consider you also as part of the first responder cohort in this country. Oftentimes, organizers are left out of that, but you are responding. So oftentimes, we're the first ones showing up in many respects as well. So I appreciate that. And of course, to my co-facilitator, Ms. Tresser, thank you. I want to thank also Merle Tresser for helping us out 100%. I'd like to thank my partner, Zelda Harris. I think it's important to recognize for myself as a cis male, African-American male, to recognize that I don't do this alone, and that I would not be here without the 100% support by my partner, Dean Harris, Professor and Dean Zelda Harris. I speak probably for Tom as well, that we both could not exist doing this work without our incredible partnerships and soulmates. Stay on, stay strong, staying safe, fight the good fight, take time for yourself, take care of yourself, take care of your friends, and by all means, please, let's reconnect June 27th. Love, peace, and soul. Good stuff. Thank you, guys.